All right, today we're going to tear down a corporate catastrophe. We're talking about the story of how a digital giant pretty much vanished overnight. Let's get right into what happened.
So, I want you to imagine something. Let's say you run a business, and one morning you wake up, check the numbers, and find that over 95% of your sales are just gone. Not down, not in a slump, vanished into thin air. What would that even feel like? Well, for one company, this wasn't just a bad dream.
That crazy number, 95.1%, belongs to a company called Askul. Now, they're a huge player in office supplies and e-commerce over in Japan. And they saw a 95.1% drop in sales in a single month. This wasn't because of a bad product launch or a stock market crash. Nope. It was because the company was brought to its knees by one single invisible attack. So, how on earth does something like this happen? Let's peel back the layers and really look at the anatomy of this cyber attack. The bad guy here has a name that a lot of us have probably heard before, but it's rare that you get to see its impact laid out this clearly. Ransomware. It's digital blackmail, pure and simple. Attackers find a way into a system, they scramble all the data so it's useless, and then they demand a massive payment to unlock it. Now, for a company like Askul, whose entire business is built on digital orders and logistics, having your data locked is like being a giant retail store and finding someone has literally welded your front doors shut. And believe me, those doors stayed welded shut for a long, long time. The hack was first spotted on October 19th, and it basically wiped out sales for the entire next month. It took them almost a month and a half to get their main online ordering system back online. In the world of e-commerce, that is an absolute eternity.
And that downtime, it translates into some truly mind-boggling numbers. So, the year before, during that same sales period, Askul pulled in about 34.8 billion yen. After the attack, a measly 1.7 billion. To put that in perspective for you, that's a drop from roughly 230 million US dollars down to just over 11 million. It's a financial nosedive.
But the story doesn't just stop with Askul's bottom line. The real shockwave from this attack was felt way beyond their own company. This is where we get to see the domino effect play out in real time.
To really understand that, we've got to talk about the supply chain. It sounds kind of boring, but it's this incredibly complex, tangled web of businesses that all have to work together to get a product from a factory all the way into your hands. And today, that web is more connected and way more fragile than ever before.
So here's a super simple look at how it works. See, Askul wasn't just another online store. It was a critical hub. Its digital warehouse was the engine that processed orders not just for its own stuff, but for tons of partner companies too. So, when that ransomware attack took out the engine, well, the entire chain just snapped.
And this is the absolute kicker. When Askul went down, it dragged other huge brands down with it. Companies like Muji and Loft, who were depending on Askul's platform to handle their own online sales, suddenly found themselves completely cut off. Their stores were effectively closed too. One company's IT headache instantly became a massive crisis for a whole bunch of other businesses.
And this whole thing brings us to a much, much bigger idea. This incident really forces us to stop and rethink what we even consider to be essential infrastructure. The basic stuff our entire society needs to function.
When we hear the word infrastructure, our brains usually jump to physical things, right? Like the power grid or bridges or water pipes. But what the Askul attack screams at us is that digital logistics and e-commerce platforms have become just as vital. When they break, it's not just a minor inconvenience. It can cripple businesses, hospitals, and schools that rely on them for their own essential supplies.
And look, this wasn't some freak accident. It's not an isolated case. We are seeing these kinds of attacks happening more and more. International shipping giants, specialized transport companies, other e-commerce platforms, they are all becoming targets for the exact same reason. Because they are such a critical link in the chain of our modern economy. This is a systemic problem.
This quote from the source material just hits the nail on the head. For so long, we've kind of thought of cybersecurity as, a problem for the IT department to solve. But what we're seeing now is what it really is, a core business risk that can absolutely destroy a company's value and its reputation in a blink of an eye.
So if this is the new normal, the obvious question is, what do we do about it? How do we stop the next 95% collapse from happening? Well, the big realization here is that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right? So one company beefing up its own security just isn't enough if its partners are still vulnerable. The future has to be about what we call supply chain security, a kind of collective defense where every single company in the network works together to raise the security bar for everybody.
And this might even start to change how we think as customers. We've always been trained to hunt for the best price or the fastest shipping. But maybe, just maybe, the new question we need to start asking is, how reliable is this service? How resilient is it? Our choices could start to reward the companies that actually invest in being stable and secure.
Which really just leaves us with one last thing to think about. I want you to consider all the online stores, the delivery apps, the digital services you use every single day, probably without a second thought. They all depend on the same invisible, fragile infrastructure. So what would actually happen in your life if one day they all just stopped working?